Flats are probably one of the most popular types of calibration frames. Pretty much everybody does them. Now, why most people do them and why they see a need for them is because the majority of telescopes, they have this thing called field fall off, or in other words, or vignetting is what some people call it. And most of your APC size sensors and your 35 millimeter sensors will show heavy vignetting in just about all telescopes. Now, this vignetting gets worse with faster telescopes, and it gets a lot worse with focal reducers. And because of that, flats become pretty essential. Now, I shoot all 4/3 sensors. My mono camera is a 4/3 sensor. My SLRs are all 4/3 sensors. And as a result of that, I'm actually kind of a little bit lazy about my flats. I don't take them that often. But that said, one of the big things that you can get rid of is any type of vignetting that's in your images as a result of maybe your sensor being larger than the image circle cast by your telescope. The majority of scopes out there, at least the high-end ones, will actually tell you what the image circle size of your telescope is. Now, I know this is a Skywatcher telescope, and Skywatcher guarantees that this thing will fully fill a 35 millimeter sensor. Now, that being said, I use a 4/3 sensor, and at the very edge of the frames, I can just barely start to see a little bit of stars trailing off a little bit. So take what they say with a grain of salt. With smaller scopes especially, you're going to have field fall off. And I know even Skywatchers, or no, I'm sorry, Explorer Scientific's 152 millimeter f8 triplet with a focal reducer has an image circle that's 30 millimeters. And the image circle of a 35 millimeter camera is 43. So yeah, flats are pretty essential if you're using a bigger sensor, and so there's something you may have to take every single night. Now, why you might need to take them every single night actually leads us into the next thing. So in your filter or on your sensor, you can get specks of dust. And these specks of dust can be very, very small, and flats will actually allow you to compensate for these, because what they do is they cast a shadow on the sensor, and so it dims that particular part of the image. Now, it won't completely block out the image. It won't be a black hole. Okay, it'll be just darker than the surrounding pixels around it. So with the software that we use to stack our images, we can take flats, and the flats will allow the software to actually compensate for those dust spots. And so eliminating them altogether, and it gives us a nice even image. Now there's this false rumor out there that you need to take flats every single night because of these dust specks, that they can move every single night on you. This is not true if you don't tear your equipment down. I personally keep my entire optical assembly, in other words, everything from here on up on the scope, I keep this assembled. I don't take it apart. And so because of that, I really am pretty, again, I said earlier, lazy about taking flats. I don't take them very often because of this. Only when you take your equipment apart and put it back together again do you really need to take flats. And at the end of the day, really, flats for the dust specks, the number two thing that we're taking care of with flats, just keep your equipment clean. If you keep your equipment clean, it's going to minimize just how precise you need to be with your flats. And really, the fewer types of calibration frames that you have in your library, the better, because it's one less thing to get disorganized about. Now, there is one last type of thing that we can actually compensate for by taking flats. Like I said, flats are complicated, okay? It's actually noise, okay? There is actually a type of noise that is present in our flats. And by taking flats properly, we can compensate for that in our image stacking software and thus eliminate yet another type of noise. Now, this type of noise is probably the least virulent of all the different types of noise that are in our image. But, by breaking up our noise into the different components that the noise is made out of, we can better eliminate it. We can basically completely eliminate it if we take enough calibration frames. Now, to really effectively get rid of this type of noise, you're going to want to take a fourth type of calibration frame, which I considered a part of taking flats, and that's what we call a dark flat. All right, to do your flats, for hardware setup, first, we need to be focused at an exact infinity. Now, you can leave your scope set up overnight and just do this the next day after your imaging session, and you've already got the scope focused. I personally like to focus for each filter, and this is one of the reasons why I do this at night. But if you're just shooting with a one-shot color camera or like an SLR, then you can just do this once. So focus in infinity. We're actually going to remove lens cap. Now, when I focus, I use a Batenoff mask, and once again, the reason why focusing is so incredibly important here is that if you're not at the exact same point of focus, the size, and I won't say the shape, but the size of those dust specks, the shadows that they cast, could be a different size. And what that could create is a little halo, and also around your stars, that could create like a double halo. Like you'll see a white and black sort of in and out on the star. So, taking a white t-shirt, we're going to put it over the telescope, and then strap it back nice and snug like so. Now you want the t-shirt stretched fairly taut. You don't want any wrinkles in here, or they're going to cast an uneven field on the flats that you're not going to take. With the telescope properly covered and then pointed at a blank section of the sky, we can now turn to the camera. Now each and every single filter position that you have in your filter wheel needs to be set at that filter's point of infinity, which will be different for every filter regardless if you have parfocal filters or not. And then here in preview, we can actually kind of establish using the histogram which shutter speed will get us closest to the middle, or we can even type in an exact value to get us exactly in the middle. We want to use the same bin value, of course. And then here we're going to go into the sequence section, and we're going to choose that same shutter speed that we found, put our histogram right in the middle. Once again, same bin level, same filter, and we're going to do a set of flats for each and every single filter, in this particular instance, luminance. And now for the repeat, I do about 200, and I just do 200 because this is so easy to do, and you can do it in the daytime. Title it flat, and go back to the main menu. Just hit the start button, and it just does it all for you automatically. This doesn't cost you any shooting time at night if you do this during the day. Once we've shot a section of flats for each and every single filter, we remove the diffuser and then put the lens cap back onto the telescope, and we go back and we take one more set of flats, but this time they're dark flats. I just like to make one single change to my sequence here. I change it to darks and then just rerun the thing, and you're going to use all the exact same settings. You want the same temperature of the sensor, you want the same bin level, the same gain, the same everything. And what this does is this allows us to take away the thermal energy that's in our picture and gives us the purest, most precise flat possible. Flats with a one-shot color camera such as a SLR is pretty easy. We're just going to focus at infinity, which I usually verify on an actual star. Also turn on the electronic shutters so that you don't wear out the mechanical shutter. And then we're going to set the camera to aperture priority, which allows the camera to select the shutter speed, and we will select the aperture, which you need to use the same aperture that you took your flats at. And we also need to set exposure compensation at 0, because we don't want the camera moving the histogram to the right or left. We want it right in the middle. Next we go into menu, and this part once again can all be automated if you're using a 4/3 camera. We just go into the sequence setting. I like to turn on about 256, and then an interval of 1 second. You have to have an interval of at least 1 second. And then just hit menu again to go back to the main shooting sequence, and then just hit the shutter speed, and also verify up there at the top that it's going to take 256 photos, and it will do everything all automatically and quite easily for you. And then we can go back and just repeat the same process with all the exact same settings, same ISO as our lights, same aperture as our lights, and then just put the lens cap over the camera and then shoot our dark flats, which for that our focus doesn't matter, and then it will give us the absolute most perfect flat possible. Also, if you have one of the newer MacBook Pros, really any of the machined aluminum body MacBook Pros, they have very good screens on them. I wouldn't try this on a PC without using a t-shirt over the lens, but I just set the laptop up, load a white image, and then you can basically just rest the thing right on top of it and set it up for its sequence and just have it take its flats. My first digital camera was an Olympus E1, which had an amazing dust removal system, and Olympus has incorporated that into every single camera. Even their lowest dollar cameras have had this system. And that's probably one of the reasons why you will see me not taking as many flats, but they're still important, and I can see why those who are using mono cameras, like the ones used to take these pictures, would consider them very important. And I know as I start to take more mono images with narrowband filters, I'll probably be using them more and more. Anyways, I hope this video was informative to you. Please like and subscribe or share with your friends. Clear skies, everybody.